Freedom is about to be lost in the next 3 days when it comes to crypto. Let's break it down. I do want to thank our sponsor, and that is Tangem, because this gives you freedom in self-custody. You guys need to take part in self-custody right now. This is one of the best things in crypto that you can do, and that is getting your tokens off of centralized exchanges, put them in your own managed wallet. Very easy to set up and super simple. 3 minutes to get going here. It works like a credit card with your phone. And this is by far one of the best platforms out there for self-custody. Use it, guys. Use our link down below to get a little bit of a discount. Let's get into everything that's going on with the Clarity Act, because this is a huge, huge weekend. If you look at what the current Senate Banking Committee is doing right now, is we have a few more days, 3 days to be exact, before Thursday at 10 a.m. when the write-ups and the markups will go into play. And this is one of the most important times that we have seen in crypto, and there's for many reasons, and I'll break down a lot of things that are happening, and there was a lot of drama over the weekend right now. What's interesting, though, is a Polymarket is now holding the possibility of a Clarity Act at around 79%. I don't know if Polymarket would stay there. I think it would go down after what I'm about to show you here on today's episode, because this is a critical thing. When you look at this new advocacy group, and this is the interesting point I'm getting at, Investors for Transparency. They're running primetime ads on Fox News primarily, urging viewers to oppose DeFi provisions in the upcoming crypto market. So it's basically saying, don't let DeFi get in the way of passing this, when in reality, DeFi is one of the cornerstones of what this market clarity bill is all about. And this going into the primetime cycle to a Republican platform like Fox News tells me they're trying to reach other Republicans out there that haven't made their decision up on how they're going to go on clarity going forward. Here, of course, was some other things that happened. This, of course, was Hayden Adams hitting on the same thing. Group named Investors for Transparency, running public ads. This deserves a Prometheum-style deep dive on the crypto industry. And remember, the last time that we saw clarity in the early stages, Prometheum was one of the companies, and if you guys go back and look at, just search Prometheum on our channel, and you'll find out these guys were an actor, definitely an op, that was trying to thwart the movement of what we would see in clarity, and furthermore, even into the Genius Act. So this may be the kind of thing that we're dealing with right here with this advocacy group, because what we have not been able to do is find out who these guys are, who's funding them, who's behind them. It's almost like a black box, and they popped up on Twitter last fall, 2025. So it's a brand new organization and a brand new thing forward. So I don't know, guys. This is very peculiar at a peculiar time, for sure. It boils down to basically 3 elements. What, if any, in terms of ethic rules will apply to public officials dabbling in crypto? This is going to be a big deal, including the president, which means if the president were to give up his stablecoin in a way of, kind of as a sacrificial lamb, that may be enough for this to pull over the finish line. Who wins the great stablecoin yield debate? This, of course, is either going to be crypto or banks, or whether a compromise emerges, which I think is kind of what's brewing right now. I'll show you what I wrote about this weekend that's specific to that point. And then also where Democrats and Republicans land on DeFi, especially around securities trading and illicit finance. So this whole issue with DeFi, which is the one area that is trying to be protected, is pretty significant. Couple of points that came out over the weekend was Senator Also Brooks put out a proposal to restrict yield transactions. One of the areas of a compromise that was aligned for this was a part of a 2-part tweet that I put out around Senator Also Brooks. If you guys aren't following her, she, of course, is a senator from Maryland. And the idea was really boiling around 2 frameworks, and this is in reference to yields. One was the passive yield ban, which is kind of the bank shield. This would basically restrict third-party intermediaries, such as exchanges, to not give you yield. So that would be a no-go. The idea is that it would go to an active yield pathway, which means that you'd have to do something with your asset. So staking, lockups, doing things like that, committing the fund for a fixed set of terms, like a 7 or 30 or 90. Those are the kind of variations. Based on everybody that we've talked to so far, and we had Senator Warren Davidson on last week, we had the DeFi Education Fund, this is something that both senators and congressmen are getting behind from both sides of the aisle. So this would get a little bit interesting as we start to see this go forward. But again, this is still very new, and it's very possible that we're going to deal with something that maybe is even more nefarious here when it comes to the Clarity Act. One note that you can kind of look at, and that is if they can ban stablecoin rewards, the next up is going to be staking rewards, lending, etc. Pretty much whatever they want. It's about who sets the boundaries, to the point I'm getting at. The one thing you can do, and remember, this is one of the things that Coinbase did to help get Genius Act through, is this right here. Go over to Stand With Crypto. You guys can, of course, reach out to your senators. You join the fight. It gives you some things to put into that. We're going to actually show you the 3 things that you need to have addressing all of your senators and congressmen out there in being able to get them aware of where you stand. And I'll show you that at the end of the video. Another thing I want to go to is a clip. Now, this clip is Charles Hoskinson talking about David Sachs. He is the crypto czar and AI czar, and whether or not he is successful or not successful, all based on Clarity. Take a look.
But here's the reality of the situation. I don't think the Clarity Act is going to pass in this quarter, and because it's an election year. If it doesn't pass this quarter, I think Sachs should resign. He's utterly failed us as an industry.
How could he control what Trump did before he was even in office?
He was selected before Trump launched Trump Coin. And what he should have done is say, if you do this, I'm going to resign. That's the up part of all this, is he's so poorly advised by the people around him. If his goal is just extractive, he could have made so much more money doing it after the framework, because the new framework would have supercharged the markets and brought a lot of money into the markets, and you're launching a coin into a bull market. And also the Democrats can't complain. Here's another thing that David up on. And it's so bad. It's so bad. What are the standards? We're going to be writing RFPs at the State Department. So how do we distinguish Solana from Ethereum, from Bitcoin, from Cardano, from anything else? You can't. So it's just bribery. It's just 101 stuff. And I guess he's doing that, and he's the AI guy at the same time. And what are the KPIs?
But most people would say passing the Genius Act and passing Clarity, from an outside perspective.
Sure,
right?
and what do we get with Genius? We got fan service for banks. But by no means is that a retail bill. And you know what it does is centralizes the industry around BlackRock and Cantor and Goldman Sachs and huzzah, great.
I agree with almost everything he's saying there. The big key, though, to me would be the position of Sachs. Sachs is David Sachs, the crypto czar. He is in control of the White House, or at least the administration, when it comes to educating Congress and the Senate. Now, I get it. There's a lot of mistakes that happened. But at one point, he is going to have to be called to the floor to either win it or lose it. If he loses it and we get a bad Clarity Act, that's the worst thing that can happen for crypto. It may be good for banks or it may be good for enterprises, but it's not going to be good for freedom. And I think that's the biggest issue. You probably could have seen things starting to showcase a little bit when Bo Hines left. Not saying Bo Hines was an answer to it, but the fact that we started to see a weakness in the administration, that probably should have given us some indication that something was brewing there in D.C. Another thing that you got to concern yourself with, and this is where it gets a little dicey, and this is the Trump administration going to Davos. This concerns me because it's likely that he's probably going to bring up crypto as a key point at the Davos event. How he does it will be interesting to see what he announces. Be on the lookout, because that's coming up just here in a few weeks. That also may have something to do with what's going on in D.C. around the Clarity Act. And I would rather see a good bill that gets denied and us kind of work through that than a bad bill that makes it through. So the compromises are an absolute no. Many of these things are all about freedom when it comes to crypto. Speaking of freedom, you have to consider one of the things that X has brought us, and I feel like it has been an era for freedom. And the problem is that X themselves said, well, while all of this is going on, which this next few months is going to be critical for crypto narratives to be able to get out in the open. And if they're doing this, which is the statement right there from one of the developers, truth be told, yes, we at X are heavily focused on removing bubbles such as crypto Twitter from our app. Now, I don't know if this is a conspiracy, if there's something going on, but what you have is you have a shadow organization in D.C. marketing to Republicans. Who knows where that money is coming from? Then you have pretty much the guy who is behind most of the proliferation of crypto information, which is done and been through X pretty much for the most part over these last few bull runs. All right, so let's go to one other point here. This, of course, was Solana jumping out there and saying, all right, X to launch smart cash tags. This is kind of something that has been out there, but you guys probably saw this. It does start to accelerate more information, but I don't know. I think this was just kind of a false giving from X to say, hey, crypto crew, settle down a little bit. So one of the things that was concerning was the actual developer of this was where he says, hey, my bags are literally in my bio. If you look at his bio, well, yeah, his bags are in. He's an advisor with Solana. So this is a concern, again, because it gets into kind of that corporate issue and enterprise slop that kind of seems to be moving around. And I think the point behind all of this, so when you look at what the potential has been for X in terms of innovation, they basically lined up these things here. And that is new users spend 43% more time in the app. So that's more money. Existing users spend 20% all-time high. Downloads are up 60%, so they're selling more because you're paying to get the app itself. Subscriptions crossed 1 billion. Again, these are great money-making, but it doesn't necessarily solve the real problem, which is being able to get a true platform out there for freedom of speech, but also freedom of engagement and being able to own and hold your own. And I don't know that we'll ever get there for social media. I think that's going to be the next era of legislation battle that we will see. So it is a big issue right now as we start to move to the next level. And this clip is about an enterprise company, they happen to be Israeli, that wants to actually take away free speech. Take a look.
And I know it's difficult to hear, but it's time to limit the First Amendment in order to protect it.
What do you mean?
I mean that we need to control the platforms and take control over what they are saying based on that ranking.
The government.
The government should
control the social media.
Yeah, should do that.
And I assume you have some of those ways, obviously.
Right. So, and that drives really the next generation of companies such as Wiz, CrowdStrike, Cato networks on the network that are platforms.
China, which obviously already is using AI to control the population. Yeah. And so we're not as interested in regulation right now, certainly not at the state level, for example.
And that's a big mistake, because if China has a single narrative that protects its inner stability, and the U.S. has allows for multiple narratives, it puts them in an unfair advantage that long-term is going to cost the stability of the nation.
Man, I am so glad nobody's listening to that guy, because he's basically saying, no, we don't want to hear from any of you guys. Just shut up and listen is pretty much the case. And it's more from a side of the enterprise kind of going in this direction. And remember, this has all been about being open. And one of the things that Elon was supposed to do was get us a very open look into our government. You guys remember Doge. We failed at that. He's the guy that could pull this off, unless he's actually in there trying to figure out how to angle in and benefit what's going on at Tesla and SpaceX and all those places. So it is a problem for sure. All right, if you kind of consider openness and freedom, you have to kind of look at what's going on in Iran. And of course, this was all about the fact that they had their internet cut off. And if you look at this of what's going on now, granted, Starlink was the one area that was going to be the advantage for the Iranian people. But the real question is what is available out there in terms of an open social media platform? There really isn't any available right now when you think about it. Elon owns X. You've got the Ellisons owning other outlets out there, including TikTok. We know what Meta is doing. We know what Google is doing. We understand that. I think the real question here is when, at one point, will we ever get an open social media platform? Now, Elon made this statement. We'll make a new X algorithm, including all the code used to determine what organic advertising posts are recommended to users. We're going to make that open source in 7 days, or so on. We'll repeat every 4 weeks, comprehensive developer notes. This will be interesting. I want to see this happen. That might be a step in the right direction, but again, this is such a mess right now in terms of how we are starting to see the clamps coming down, not only for crypto, but I think crypto is exposing a lot of this stuff right here. Here was Vitalik hitting on this. If done properly, it's a good move. I think he's responding to that. I hope it will be verifiable and replicable, meaning let's just do it all. This would not solve problems, but it would definitely very effectively address concerns about algorithmic transparency. But it's all about executing, and I think he is right dead on. Vitalik also goes in here and he talks about these kind of things that, and this was the term I think should be used, and that is Corpo-slop includes things like this. So if you're seeing this, guys, out there, you already know you're part of the Corpo-slop situation, which is social media that maximizes dopamine, outrage. You know you've seen that, all right? Needless mass data collection, you know you've seen that. Walled gardens, we know we're there. Hollywood releasing 7 sequels, some tired franchise, yes. And then every corporation that rallied around slogans of diversity and equity. We all know all this stuff was Corpo-slop. So if we get clarity through with a clean bill, the real question is what wins. I think when you consider sovereignty, meaning the flexibility, Ethereum is the one that is suited to win. I would agree with Vitalik on that. There will be others that will win, but I do agree that Ethereum is one of the best out there in terms of an open, true sovereign blockchain going forward. If all of that does not happen, though, this is what is at risk in 3 days, and that is the wealth gap widening considerably. Because remember, old banks, credit cards, they've paved the way for the greatest redistribution of wealth. If you look at this in comparison to subsidize what you're doing in terms of just the credit card interest, this would be enough to do a redistribution of enough to do universal basic income for about 1.3 million people. That's the kind of gap that is being created right now. And really, crypto was supposed to solve this. It was supposed to give the everyday person the ability to bring themselves up and move to the next level. But again, this is enterprise, banking system, etc., putting so many barriers in front of us that we can't get that done. 3 days, guys, that's what you have. I want you to go over to Stand With Crypto, and this is the way you're going to, they're doing it as protect your rewards because that's kind of the sticking point right now. Put your name in there, and then what you want to do is put in the statement. And what I've got is a link to just a Perplexity run on the 3 things we think are most important right here. Full self-custody, interoperability and freedom. This is the thing, and kind of, if you don't know what that is, it'll teach you a little bit about it. No KYC AML data collection. That's a privacy statement. And then, of course, the last is no unfair advantages for TradFi incumbents versus what's happening in the crypto companies, which is really innovation and creating free markets. If we had put all these stipulations on the internet, we would not be here today with what we have in e-commerce, with the United States being one of the world leaders. This is the kind of thing that we are facing right now. This is a line in the sand. Hopefully you guys get out there and do something about it. It's going to be a fun week to watch for sure. We'll see you soon. If you like this video, hit like and subscribe, drop a comment down below, and also join our free private member group. The link is in the description.